Group chat. David, Iran negotiating with Oman. Earlier today, Inzamam Rashid was saying Iran is feeling optimistic. I said anytime you hear those words, alarm bells should go off.
Yes, so he's hearing that from Iranian officials. There were two Middle East diplomats I talked to late yesterday, and they said there's the framework for a deal, but they won't talk about any of the specifics. And the broad thing to watch is Iran going to take de facto control of the Strait of Hormuz? Will they collect fees? Can they stop traffic in one way or the other? They are going to try to get that. And if they get that, they have won this war. They will have control of the most important. They set new
facts on the ground,
energy waterway in the world.
Getting that is not the result of an agreement, right? It's just their decision to take it.
They have taken it, and the president said in another interview yesterday, we control the strait, and that is
because of our blockade.
True.
Explain to viewers that know that we have a U.S.-imposed blockade. How do you square that with the fact that Oman and Iran are the ones that are negotiating with each other?
Because Iran wants to only negotiate with Oman to show that it's a regional issue and keep the U.S. out of it. The U.S. is limited. It's using few Navy ships, and it's stopping ships from going in and out of Iranian ports. That's it. We could have sent a very large number of ships to try to fight the Iranians, sink all their boats, attack their coastline, and lose a lot of American lives. But we haven't done that because President Trump is sort of waging halfway war, where we're just using aerial attacks, and the Iranians know it. So they are going to keep pushing this through the midterm elections. They're a horrific regime that has killed thousands of their people.
And Americans.
And they are going to come out of this. If President Trump folds and gets the gas prices slightly lower, and it helps them in the midterms, you have a more powerful Iran now for years.
Ron, Americans just want to know when they're going to pay less at the pump. And, we see the oil prices surge on, some of the bombast coming out of the president. And then we see him dip when the president says that we're in ongoing negotiations. But, how long till the markets don't believe the president anymore? And then when will Americans actually get relief?
Well, I think the president's becoming increasingly less important in that regard. I mean, yesterday, and it's hard to verify some of these claims that were made, presumably by Iran, that they were going to target Saudi Arabia's energy infrastructure. If that happens, it really doesn't matter what the president says. You have a pipeline that cuts across to the Red Sea that Saudi Arabia put in place. It's above ground. It's a target. So if Iran were really to attack Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and other oil-producing countries in that region, oil prices are not coming down. They're going up.
Saudi Arabia is already under threat. The Houthis are already threatening Bab el-Mandeb. So What's the significance of that? I know many of our viewers may not even know where that is. I had to do my own research, even having studied all of this.
It's so there's already the most important energy route in the world, the Strait of Hormuz, and just on the other sort of end of the Arabian Peninsula is the Red Sea.
The other artery.
That's another area that has been closed also. So that shows how aggressive Iran is being about. They just are not going to back down right now to the Trump administration, and it's just an extraordinary moment. And the president has mismanaged, this war.
And to remind also that the Houthis are an Iranian proxy. Marriott, you look like
I was just going to ask David, you said we lose this war if this agreement stands as we think it will. But isn't that kind of the best case scenario right now, that we have some kind of agreement and
you just need to get it over with?
Yes.
I don't want to go easy bluntly on President Trump. This was a war of choice. You're making Iran, more powerful. You're not limiting its nuclear program. It's a huge loss for the United States in terms of its standing throughout the world. It's a huge loss for Israel, a very close American ally, and for Saudi Arabia and all these countries. And the problem is, they have enough missiles left. Right now, there's a proposal on the table for 2 weeks of intensive U.S. strikes from the commander of CENTCOM. The problem is if President Trump does that, you will have missiles raining down on Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and all those oil fields.
And we have depleted munitions.
We don't have enough Patriot missiles to stop that. And that, I would argue, is the fault of Defense Secretary Hegseth. You've got to plan for worst-case scenarios when you make the decision on February 28th to attack Iran. This is now a 6-month-old war.
Well, Dan Kane tried.
I was just going to say, right? The president, according to all the reporting, the president was warned by the generals that they were already in a precarious situation when it came to munitions. We already were needing to supply munitions to Ukraine. There are major concerns here for our allies in the region who can't protect themselves against Iranian retaliation. So it's handcuffing our actions.
And this administration is asking the Congress for $1.5 trillion, including for new Trump nuclear-powered battleships that no one wants.
Totally
when the future
obsolete,
is drones,
right? Yeah.
completely obsolete. And this is just rank incompetence. And just lastly, 50,000 Americans are risking their lives for this country right now, and they don't have the Patriot missiles they need to defend American bases.
And not to mention that if this is a wider regional war, I'm sorry.
Go for it. Quick, and then I'll get to Max.
The Abraham Accords go away. Israel becomes, far less protected than it was in the past. And you then, when you're talking about, is this the best case scenario? No, oil prices will remain elevated globally for quite some time into the future. So for us, for anyone, it's not a best case scenario.
Well, is there a best case scenario? Right.
Max?
And to Ron's point, not only oil prices, but gas prices, because gas prices lag oil prices. It was so crazy at the beginning of the war. You had Trump administration officials coming out and saying, well, gas prices are going to start to come down in a couple of weeks. And when you're talking to experts on this, they're saying, no, it's going to take months, maybe a year, because you have refining capacity that has been hurt. And then you have the fact that gas stations buy the gas when it's expensive and then have to sell it. So there's this natural lag. People need to buckle up for a long run of higher gas prices.
We have a very short window here, but I hate promising viewers something and not delivering at least part of it. This is a longer discussion to be had. But Mary, let's turn to what's going on here at home with the Democrats. The New York Times has really interesting reporting that Third Way, a group of moderate Democrats, is raising $15 million in an effort to combat Democratic socialists. Everybody heard that right. They're raising money to try to defeat Democratic socialists in their midst. Doesn't sound like the party. They're going to have a unifying breakfast or, an event today. Abdul El-Sayed has become somewhat of a firebrand within the Democratic Party. How does all of this shake out?
I mean, can we separate out Third Way from the Democrats? Because I really feel like this is a interest group that is trying to start this fight. But
isn't it indicative? We can definitely do that. But isn't it indicative of a more moderate swath of the Democratic Party that's concerned about electability and about policies?
Sure, that's true. I don't know. I think this infighting is not productive. And I'll tell you why, which is I think one of the things I have personally learned from Donald Trump is how important speed is to voters in communicating that you are willing to get stuff done. I would argue Trump has done that incredibly destructively, especially in the second term. But I do think voters look at him and they say that's a guy who just does stuff. And when I look at people who are communicating their effectiveness in interesting ways, I look at someone like Zohran Mamdani, who's constantly telling you, I am doing this pied-à-terre tax. I'm doing X and Y and Z. Now, if you are too busy fighting amongst yourselves to communicate what you are doing when you are doing it, you are going to lose the voters. So if I was someone who's looking to invest $15 million right now, I might look at this race in Michigan and say, gee, it looks like a lot of voters are pretty interested in Medicare for all right now. And how the heck am I going to do that? Because it's going to be really hard, or get anywhere close to that, because you see a lot of people responding to that. And you may not want to do it, but at the same time, it seems to be interesting to people.
We just bought ourselves more time, guys. We have more time to talk about this. Thank you, producers. Max, how do you square all of that with the fact that you saw this 1% margin in Michigan? It was predicted to be a much more dominant victory for El-Sayed. And clearly there were about 40-something% of the electorate, the Democratic electorate, that said, we're not in bed. We're not going to do this with, the way that El-Sayed wants to do it. Where do they go now?
Well, I think there's a question about polling. Obviously, the polls got it wrong. It's very hard to poll in 2026. And I think this is the latest example of that. But I do think it's an impressive win, even a 1% win in an election like this, where his opponent was running with endorsements from the governor, from, huge monetary advantage. And when I look at this Third Way thing, I think it plays well with donors. There are a lot of donors who think that they can just put a bunch of money and they're going to change voters' opinions. But what we're seeing from these populist Democrats and even some Republicans is they're treating it as a badge of honor, not getting the money.
But is that long term, is that kind of strategy going to work when we live in the political climate of Citizens United and other, this is the nature of politics right now where, of course there's more power for the people. It's being demonstrated in some of these elections, but money talks still, and the coffers are huge for the GOP.
Obviously, it's going to hurt it's going to hurt the Democratic Socialists, and when ads still work. But I do think it's not going to do the thing that they want, which is change people's opinion or offer a different vision. It's infighting, essentially.
I think the DSA is the inverse of MAGA, I think, at this point. I mean, I think that's really what's going on here.
The foil.
Yeah, and the problem is the most effective president at creating shared prosperity, a balanced budget, and an intelligent use of federal funds was Bill Clinton. And he was very much instrumental with Tony Blair creating the notion of third way, although I think it's not nearly the same organization as it was back then. And so it's a little bit disconcerting to see, this very far left, populist movement getting extremely powerful, if you will, within the organization. When, if you go back and look at history and look at what the likes of a Bill Clinton was able to do, that was one of the best periods in our modern economic history relative to anything we've seen since, and to a certain extent even before.
Every day that Democrats spend attacking each other and not attacking Donald Trump and just saying Trump is, I think, a mistake. And then just one last thing. There's a big rise in independence. I don't know the polling as well as others, but this was a story from June saying that the number of people who are identifying as independents, whether they're registered or not, has risen since it was 23% in 2000. Now 32% of registered voters are registered as independents. That's a crucial swing group for this midterm election in the fall.